Hi, Mr. Given.
Hello, Dr. Kalyan.
How do you do?
I'm good. Thank you so much.
Nice meeting you today.
Nice
and
meeting you too.
I'm very much interested in interacting with people from different parts of the world. And I'm glad to meet you because you are from Botswana and you have varied experience of teaching in the US, right? You are in the US, you taught in your own country, then you have been teaching in Oman also for quite some time.
That's right.
Very nice. So, Mr. Given, in your country, Botswana, how is the education system generally, and specifically, how is ELT going?
I will talk about education in Botswana with specific reference to English language teaching. English in Botswana is an official language. So this means that all children learn English from primary school, or I would say from kindergarten. Yes, as an official language means is the language of business, is the language that is used in parliament. It's used almost everywhere. So you'll find that it's incorporated in official documents and in almost every other official communication. So children are taught English from when they are really young. I remember that at primary school level, students are taught subjects in Setswana, which is the national language, up to standard 4.
Okay.
Yes, after that, they shift to English language. So they will be taught all subjects in English language, and it's only Setswana language that will be taught in Setswana.
Okay.
Yes, so that obviously makes them to acquire the language at a much faster rate, and their proficiency, for instance, compared to second language speakers, will be different. One other advantage is that students actually have are exposed to a lot, to an English-speaking environment. They can communicate in English with their parents,
Okay.
with their siblings, with people they meet outside, and even people who speak Setswana. They can still speak, decide to communicate in English.
So English is very popular there
It's
in your
very,
country.
exactly.
Mhm.
And it's also you can say, those who speak English very well, it gives some form of status.
Okay.
Yes.
Very nice. So right from class 1, are they learning English, or at what stage English is introduced to Botswanian students?
As I said, at private schools, for instance, the medium of communication is English,
Okay.
which means students will start be taught in English right from class 1.
Okay.
At government schools, they will be taught the other subjects in Setswana, and from standard 4, that's when they start being taught everything in English.
Very nice.
Yes, and when I was studying, we at grade 12, or what the equivalent of grade 12, which we call Form 5, we wrote O-level English language examinations.
Oh, IGC.
Yes.
London, O-level and A-level.
Exactly.
Very nice.
So that is the kind of examinations that they are given there.
Great.
Yes.
The teachers are from the native speaking countries, or are they teachers from different countries in your country?
Well, during my time when I was a student at secondary school, I think about 60 or 70% of the teachers in my secondary school at that time, they were foreign teachers, mostly Indian, and from some other African countries. And I remember we used to have a good number of Americans, Peace Corps, you remember those?
Yeah.
Yes, so we would have them coming in and out all the time, and most of them will be of teachers.
Okay.
Yes, and we had a good number of them in the English language department, and Now, I think more than 90% is locals.
Okay.
Yes.
Locals. Good. Then Mr. Given, from Botswana, you have traveled to America. Okay. How is your experience in America? Because native learners, right, they speak English, and teaching English to native speakers, Americans. How has been your experience? Can you share some experiences in the classroom, otherwise generally, whatever you feel like sharing with us?
Okay. Well, it was a very good experience. I was able to teach in 3 different places. The first one was a private institution that it was in Virginia, and it mostly had students from Mexico. So those were adults who were doing. They actually worked during the day, and in the evening when they knocked off, they went to this institution. So they needed to learn English in order to further their careers, to be able to communicate in their jobs, and also because being able to speak English well would give them further prospects at advancing in their jobs or getting better jobs. Yes. That was my first teaching experience when I got there, and I stayed there for, I think that was a year, and it was an amazing experience.
So what kind of curriculum or topics were there, and which methods did you follow there? Methods of teaching. Which type of curriculum was there in American colleges or wherever you taught? Yeah. So what did you observe in ELT generally? I mean, maybe materials, methods, whatever you can share with us.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I observed that really worked positively for the students is the kind of materials that we had for the students. The textbooks, the students could identify with a lot of the activities on the textbooks. Yes. These are students who needed English for specific purposes. Most of them worked in restaurants, others worked in companies, construction companies. So the directors and the management of the school selected materials basing on the kind of students that they had. So it made it easy also to, when you are teaching, to use, for instance, interactive teaching methods, because you could get the students to actually share their experience whilst they are at work. That kind of teaching, those kind of materials encourage the students to talk.
Okay.
Yes, thereby being able to gain vocabulary which they needed to be able to use when they got back to work.
So you enjoyed teaching in America?
A lot.
Oh, okay, good.
A lot. My second experience was with the public schools.
Okay.
Yes. The elementary schools.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was with a tutoring company actually.
Okay.
So they would select those students that needed additional assistance, yes, with their learning, and they would I would be traveling across to the schools that have identified students that need such assistance.
Very nice.
Yes. So that involved teaching smaller groups. So you had better interaction with the students, and they also had materials that were specifically tailored for those kind of students, and they worked very well.
So how American language, English language, is different from this British language? Because we see a lot of variations between British English and American English. In your view, is there any difference, or it is one and same? What's your comment on it?
Well, that's a very good question. I'll start with the issue of course there's difference in pronunciation.
Yeah.
When I got there, they realized that I couldn't pronounce, I don't speak American English.
Yes.
And
Neither
sometimes I wonder if the differences are not being overstated or overrated. Well, because they hired me and I had a wonderful teaching time there. And not even once did I notice my accent, for instance, to have been of any hindrance in the students' understanding or in the field. Yeah. So, and also, I think basically there are a lot of similarities than differences. But then I realized we have to be aware of where the similarities are. Yes. For instance, where there are different words for the same thing, that you have to know. Yes, because if you are going to teach students the British meaning when they are in America, they will go into many places where a lot of people will not know what they are talking about.
Okay.
Yes, I remember one time I got out of the taxi and I told the taxi driver, I have luggage in the boot. Yes.
Okay.
And he looked at me like, what boot? Yes.
He thought shoes, maybe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was referring to the trunk. Yes. And then
they call it trunk, you know.
Exactly. So you need to be aware of those words that have distinctive differences.
Yeah.
Yes.
Really
So that you can get your students to be to know that, to be familiar with those.
Interesting.
Yes.
And the Middle East experience, I'm sure, will be entirely different from Botswana and American teaching experience. Your experience, I mean.
Right.
So, what do you have to share with us about your Middle East experience? Maybe Oman, wherever you taught.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there are similarities and differences, of course. Yes. In the Middle East as well, they don't emphasize on whether you should be strictly British, British American English, British English. Well, in the Middle East, they don't emphasize that you should teach either strictly British English or American English. Yes. So, and it helps if you will be able to let the students know or make them aware of these differences, especially where not knowing the differences could maybe disadvantage the students in any way. Yes. On the students, I have realized that students are more or less the same all over the world.
Yeah. The learning difficulties are same.
Exactly.
And the learners
are more or less the same.
More or less the same.
Yes. Especially when it comes to you managing them.
Okay.
Yes, it is more or less on the educator, how you manage your learners. Yes, they are not that much. There is not that much difference.
Okay.
Yes. When it comes to the teaching English as a second language is of course different than teaching English to, as you said, native speakers. Yes, native speakers, they are studying English because they are going as a subject.
Yes.
They need to be able to pass exams that test their understanding of the intricacies of the English language. So your focus would mostly be on maybe grammar, literature, and so it will go deeper, helping them to analyze literary text, for instance.
That's interesting.
Yes, comprehension. Yes, and then with teaching English as a second language, depending on the level, it determines how you are going to approach. Yes.
Correct. So, in Oman, what did you find interesting in ELT?
A lot of things. Yes. Teaching in Oman, first of all, I believe anybody that you will meet that has taught in Oman will mention the amazing discipline, yes, and, of the students, yes, and the friendliness of the people. I think it's the culture. Yes. So this means that when you get into the class, you are not likely to be spending much time on class management issues. Yes, because the students are really polite. Yes, and in many cases, most of the students, you find students are very much enthusiastic and willing to learn. English here is also regarded as a language that can help you make it in life. Yes, all jobs require English. The students will tell you that we need to know how to speak and write well because we want to have good jobs. Yes. So that in itself is a great motivation. It's great motivation for the students. And of course, sometimes you come across the cases where the students have absolutely no idea what to do. And then you have to start.
It happens in any country, any classroom, it happens.
Exactly. So where you are able to provide maybe remedial assistance, that usually helps a lot. Yes. You can see students moving to when they knew absolutely nothing, they had no idea what's happening, to them being able to write something that you can actually marvel at. Yes.
So, looking at the 21st century demands, apart from language skills, what other skills are required for this present generation here in this region?
Well, I think it's changing so fast.
Yes.
And I think it's very important for us to emphasize that our learners develop soft skills. Yes, instead of that teaching them what they have been taught. I think institutions and educators should now realize that soft skills have become so important. Otherwise, if people are going to focus mostly on what they can learn and use, I think we are getting into an age where they are developing machines. Artificial intelligence is becoming really advanced. So they are developing a lot of machines that would maybe in a few years take over a lot of the jobs that could be used by, that could be done by people.
So they are getting ready for the job market now.
Exactly. So if we can teach them soft skills, then they will be unique. These are things that you cannot teach a machine or a robot what to do. Teach them attitude, teach them emotional intelligence.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. Those things. Focus on
critical thinking.
Critical thinking, for instance.
Okay.
Yes.
So such skills are going to be very useful.
I think they are going to be very useful in the near future.
Communication, critical thinking,
communication skills, critical thinking, emotional intelligence, attitude, developing the right attitude. Yes.
So to start with, these are the skills.
Exactly.
Okay. What's your opinion on testing system? Like we have IELTS, we have TOEFL, globally very popular. And are the students getting prepared to face these challenges of global standards, or what? What do you think, in your opinion?
Well, I think there's been a lot of research and evaluation on the testing systems that are there.
Okay.
And I'm afraid some of the research doesn't seem to talk very well about the testing systems. Yes. In my experience, I've realized that whenever you bring the assessment aspect of it, students just think of the exam, and even it pressurizes the age.
So, Mr. Given, it has been nice interacting with you so far on various aspects of ELT and global ELT. Now, thinking of this exams, various global exams like IELTS and TOEFL, I think various countries, people have been preparing for that. In this context, in this region, how students are being prepared?
Well, for instance, I think in most colleges here, students go through the General Language Foundation.
GFP, yeah.
Yes, the GFP, the General Foundation Program, where they, I think for a year or 3 semesters, students, depending on the levels that they are, if the student is really poor in their English language, they are probably put on level 1 or pre-foundation level, then intermediary, then advanced level, like that. Some colleges would have 4 levels, level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. Yes, after which, if the student has successfully gone through all these programs, then they can start, they are ready to go through their specialization courses where they will be taught in English. So, which means if the student does well in the General Foundation program, you assume that they are ready to be taught in English and be able to perform in their respective subjects in English language. When it comes to the international examinations, I don't know if I don't know about the researches that show the correlation between good performance in the international exam and the students' ability to be able to use English in their learning. Yes, but I have experience with the General Foundation program, and I can vow that a student who does very well and ends up passing the English General Foundation program will be able to do well in their specialization in as far as English language is concerned.
So finally, Mr. Given, what's your advice for ELT practitioners?
My advice, I mean, a lot of things, but
Okay.
I'll just focus on a
yeah.
few. That ELT, like a lot of fields in education, is always going through a lot of changes. Yes, so every ELT practitioner should ensure that they don't stop learning. Yes, new issues keep coming up in ELT, just like in education. And also I feel that the challenge of every educator is to always be able to strike a balance. I know that educators have, they are given deadlines by their employers, there are examinations, so yes, you have to avoid that temptation to teach for the exam, and know that you are equipping students with what they will need to use later on, either in their specialization subjects or in the workplace. Yes. So, like English for specific purposes, students should be able to get out there and show that they have it.
Okay.
They have what it takes. And the last thing is that as an ELC practitioner, you have to do what you can. Yes, as an ELT practitioner, you have to do what you can to equip students with those soft skills.
Okay.
You cannot, even if it's not in the curriculum, you will be doing justice to the students, to infuse it within your teaching, critical thinking. As you prepare your materials, find ways of infusing these soft skills. Your students will remember you for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Given. That's been wonderful.